right, well, good morning again. I do have a little bit of administrative stuff to do, and this is my second favorite thing to do when it comes to announcements. My first favorite is when we give away baptism Bibles. That's my number one. But the Ryan family is a new member, and we just wanted to welcome them. So we have this little welcome basket, and if you guys would stand up here and we can clap for you and say thank y'all for being here, and great to have y'all. Okay. Yeah, I love giving those out as we are, one of the things that, and I'll just be honest with you, as part of leadership, my philosophy on what we do here at church, and not only do we want to do ministry and all that, but one of the things we need to do is just be people that just don't run people off. And that's an example of us not doing that, just not running folks off, just being friendly and real people. We don't have all the answers, but you know what? We'll listen and to your questions and do this all together. So we're super glad to have you guys as members and finding out how we can all do ministry together. This morning, if you got your Bibles, turn to Habakkuk. We're going to be there. We're going to part 2. Last week we talked about a faith that can ask why, and this week we're going to talk about a faith that can ask how long. But before I get into that, I want to talk about briefly a song, and I apologize if this bothers you that I do this, but I let things that we do adjust what I'm going to say, and I want to bring this point up. Remember that song we sang earlier? It says, "Lest I forget." Well, there's a phrase in there, "Lest I forget Gethsemane." And I love it when just a word can paint a picture for us. I mean, if there are times in our life where a word, just a word, paints a picture. Like if I said 9/11, we're all thinking about the same thing. I mean, if I just if I just say certain words, we can think. And Gethsemane is a word that brings an entire picture into play. You got our Savior. You got Jesus. Now remember this, he's a real person. I think a lot of times we get him confused with like the DC universe or the Marvel universe, and we just think of this unreal hero type person, but Jesus was as real and flesh and blood as the person sitting next to you. And all of those thoughts and all of those fears and all of those feelings and all that, when you cut him, he bled. When you struck him, he hurt. When you betrayed him, his heart was broken, just like yours and just like mine. And so we've got this moment in time where this real person on our behalf is going through some of the most stressful, heart-wrenching time that any person's ever experienced. Not because of just that moment, but because of what was to come. Now think about this. He's got his inner circle guys, his boys. And they're over there asleep. They can't, they just don't get it. This week, I was in Omaha all week. I missed, the great flood. Got a call on Tuesday morning. And our basement had inches of water. The amount of inches is up for debate. Some say 2, some say 6. I think it was more like 1.5. But the more you had to deal with it, the deeper it got. And so Hyatt is helping deal with this because I'm 6 hours away. I'm no help. And so Hyatt's helping deal with this, and he's got a little bit of me in him, and so he comes upstairs, and he's got, there's people kind of just standing around, just sort of chilling, maybe thinking about, well, what do I have for breakfast this morning? And he's like, am I missing something? Or is this standing around time right now? People, we've got water in the basement. Let's move. And of course they did. And now that's funny and all, but think about Jesus out there in Gethsemane with his boys. And he looks over and they're just sleeping. And he's like, think about the heartbreak that they don't get it. In just a few hours, people are going to come and they're going to get him. And they're going to take him against his will and they're going to beat him up bad. And not just beat you up like some playground fight, like some bully just shoving you down, taking your milk money. No, they're going to hurt him. And it's going to be brutal. And it's going to be all day. And it's going to be in front of everybody. And then it's going to end. It's going to end with one of the most horrific, torturous deaths mankind's ever thought of. And he knows this, and he's thinking about it, and he's so stressed that his sweat turns into blood. Lest I forget that. Griff, what a song to pick. That word paints that picture. And then he says, lead me to Calvary. And I wrote on my sermon notes, here comes the cavalry. Because when you think about what he did, what he went through in Gethsemane, what our God went through on the cross, on Calvary, it's all to bring in the saving reality that we so desperately need. And that should do all kinds of things to our emotion. We should be jumping for joy, proclaiming his glory. We should be weeping in our inner soul. All of the emotions, the entire roller coaster of human emotions should be brought out when we think about that one reality. Lest I forget Gethsemane. Man, the songs we sing, they're deep if you listen. If you want to dig down and allow them to be just more than just words. Lest I forget Gethsemane. What a picture to be painted by one simple word. So this morning we're going to continue with the idea that this story right here changes everything. This story keeps changing our lives and the lives of those around us every single day if we will let it, if we will apply it, if we will apply the story, tell the story of the God-man, Jesus, who lived and died and triumphantly came out of this tomb. That story will change more lives than anything we can ever tell them. And we are here today to celebrate that, and we are here today to express and to strengthen a faith that is able to believe the fact that that happened. And regardless of the fact that that happened, sometimes we look around and we see a world that doesn't kind of line up with the reality of who we know God is. And so it makes us ask questions like, why? Why, God? The questions that Habakkuk was asking. Why, God, is so much evil going on? If you're so good and you're so great, Father, why are you letting all of this happen? And I know that thousands of years later, we still ask that same question, why? And we need a faith that is able to ask why, because that's how we know we're engaging with this God that we love, that we serve. And questions are an important part of saving and strengthening one's faith. Because I realize I need a God that I can't understand. Have you ever thought about that? You ever thought about, because I know that I get frustrated not knowing all the answers and having so many questions, but the more I think about it, the more I wrestle with it, the more I realize I need a God whose thoughts are way beyond my thoughts. I need a God whose ways are way beyond my ways. I need a God who doesn't need my advice. I need a God who's beyond my ability to fully comprehend. Otherwise, I would be tempted to try to control that God. try to manipulate that God, try to wrap my mind fully around so that I could rationalize and sanitize and all of the other attizes to that God. I could make him my own instead of being made into his likeness. So we need a God that's beyond us. We need a God that creates questions. I mean, have there been times in your life when you've been confused about what God was allowing to happen? When you look around and you think, God, this doesn't seem like the things that I expect from you. This doesn't seem like the world that you've promised. And that's when what you see in the world does not correspond with what you know about who is on the throne. You see, there's times in our life when what we see is a direct contradiction to who we know. And we wonder why. And in the midst of wondering why and asking why, and remember Habakkuk, he's a minor prophet to the southern kingdom of Judah. He never addresses the people because his problem isn't with the people. His problem is, ladies, you want me to call on you? You just want me to give them the answer? Just me do it? Okay. His problem is not with the people. His problem is with God. And that's a struggle for us. We discussed that this morning in our class and last week in classes that we don't like having a problem with God. It feels dangerous for us to have a problem with what God is doing or how God is acting or what he's not doing or how he's not acting. But Habakkuk spends the entirety of his small letter, his small book, his writing, just talking to God about, I've got a problem with you. I've got a problem with what you're doing. I mean, the people are acting ridiculous. They're not acting like God's people. They're acting like the world. And Habakkuk is like, God, why are you letting this go on? Why are you letting your people act like they're not your people? Habakkuk is exercising some tough faith. A faith that will sustain us in times where it doesn't seem like God is anywhere to be found. But you see, tough faith, a strong, hard, question-asking faith is not for everybody. The fact of the matter is that most of the church, and I'm not being mean or condescending or judgy, but it's just the reality of it is that most of the church doesn't need a faith that's able to ask questions. Most of the church doesn't need a hard faith, a tough faith, a resilient faith. I mean, because this is the kind of faith that you only need if you plan on doing something with it. If you plan on mixing it up. If you plan on being part of that church that Jesus describes when Peter makes his great confession. Well, ladies, you want me to call on you on this one or just me say it? Me? Okay. This is something we talk about this morning is that Peter says to Jesus, you are the Christ. You're the Messiah, the Son of the true and living God. And Jesus says, you are absolutely right, Peter, and upon the rock of that confession, upon the steadfastness of that truth, I'm going to build a church. And the gates of hell are not going to be able to withstand the church I'm about to build. And so I asked the class this morning, and I've talked about this before, are gates primarily a defensive or offensive weapon? All right, ladies, they don't know. They're going to have to tell you. What are gates used for? Defense or offense? They can't hear that. Defense. Gates are defensive. And if the church is breaking down the gates of hell, that means the church, ladies, is on offense. The church is on offense. Thank you, Eric. I'm going to say that again. The church is on offense. And so But if you're not on offense, you don't need a tough faith. If you're not out there mixing it up, if you're not out there busting down the gates of hell, if you're not absolutely destroying the strongholds of the dominion of darkness that God calls it, then you don't need a hard faith. You don't need a strong faith. You'll do just fine with a weak and wobbly, wishy-washy VBS cartoon faith that most of the church has. Because we're not out there taking the slings and arrows. We're just trying to survive in a world that's contrary to the will of God, and we're just trying to stay under the radar. We're just trying to blend in. I mean, oh sure, we'll go to church and we'll tell people we go to church. We might even put a fish bumper sticker on, or a Joy 99.1 FM, so that, hey, honk if you love Jesus. We'll do that kind of stuff, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the real hard stuff that will put your family in peril, that will stretch your budget, that will cause you to not be able to do the things that you want to do. Maybe you haven't gone on a vacation in 10 years because you are so caught up in breaking down and busting open the gates of hell. Because your family doesn't look like everybody else's family. You're a take-in, people kind of family. You're a go out and spend money, hard-earned money on people that you don't even know if they deserve it or not. We're talking about busting down gates of hell, not just being good people. Because let me tell you something. Jesus didn't go through what he went through in Gethsemane. He didn't hang on a cross so that we can just be good, comfortable people. He did that so we would have the power to go up against the dominion of darkness. And that needs good faith. That needs hard faith. That needs a tough, question-asking faith. I told the kids this morning a story, and I've told you this before. I heard a story from a missionary friend of mine who was in a third world country eating a meal at a cafe, and there's these street kids that were out there, and they're hungry, they're starving, and he's got more food on his plate for that meal than they will see all week. And you know what they're doing? Just looking at him. Mark, how easy is it going to be to eat that sandwich? I'm just looking at you. Just looking at you. It's getting awkward, isn't it? Proprietor of the cafe sees this, and he's like, ooh, this isn't good for business. So he goes over, lets the blinds down, says, now you can enjoy your meal. See, that's what we do. We just lower the blinds. The world, we see things going on in the world, and the church is professional blind pullers. I love animals, right? I love dogs. And I asked the girl, you know what my favorite commercial is on TV right now? I don't have one. I hate commercials. But my least favorite commercial is the one about the Humane Society. When they show all those dogs that are mistreated, all those dogs that are huddled over in the corner, and they're just shaking, and they look so sad, and I just want to scoop them up and love on every one of them. But when that TV commercial comes on, you know what I do? Click. Because that's all right. Norman liked that. But it's true. Because I'm not giving money to the Humane Society. All right, all of my money goes to. But I'm not doing that. And I'm not going to sit there and get depressed watching, so I turn the channel. But we do that, don't we? Whenever we see, it's easier to turn the channel than it is to get up and change the world. But this happened right here so that we don't change the channel. So that no matter what, we know, keep the channel on what the channel's on so you can see, so that you can do something about it. But it's not for everyone. Some folks are content to just stay under the radar, look the other way. But we need a faith that will sustain us when I said last week, when we are caught between the rock. That's what Psalm says. You are my rock. You are my refuge. And we find ourselves often caught between that rock, the rock, and a hard place, which is this life. And you see, a faith that is based on a lack of affliction is on the brink of extinction. Psalm 6:3 says, how long? How long, O Lord? I'm not trying to turn the channel or to get comfortable, or, my faith is based on the fact that I can always figure out a way to stay unafflicted. I can always stay as comfortable as possible. Oh yeah, I get a little perturbed at times about, what other people are doing and this and that and the other. But for the most part, I can just be like everyone else. I can blend in. I go to work, pay my taxes. Sure, I'll go to church a little bit and throw a little on the plate, and I'll take communion and all that. And if there's a game and I've got tickets to that game and it's going to collide with church, well, I'll come and I'll take communion and then I'll scooch on out. Because we just manipulate the system to stay comfortable. The faith that has figured all that out is on the brink of extinction, but a faith that is able to say, God, how long? How long is this going to go on? Or like in Psalm 13:1-2, he says, how long must I wrestle with my thoughts? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts about what I know about you, God, and what I see going on in the world? How long will I wrestle with these thoughts? My question is, do we ever truly wrestle with those thoughts? Or do we just chalk it up as, well, that's how the world is, and I'm just not going to get involved in that? Don't forget, we are called to be in this world, not of it, not participating in what they're participating in, but we're in it. We're on the battlefield. We are mixing it up. We are dodging and taking those slings and arrows, and we're in this world. We're not aloof from it. We're not removed. We're not insulated from it. But that's what we try to do so often. Become insulated, change the channel. Faith based on a lack of affliction, it's on its way out. But how long faith struggles with how things are versus how they will be. Look with me at Habakkuk chapter 2. Starting in verse 2, he says, then the Lord replied, write this down. Write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. Now, there's a little bit of a discrepancy on what is actually the Hebrew there actually means. And so some say that it's write it down so that someone can run with it, or write it down in such a way that it's posted so that someone who's running real fast by it can still read it. So there's a little bit of a debate there on, but either way, He's saying, write this down. God said, I'm giving you a cheat sheet here. Write this down. This is important stuff. He says, write this revelation down. So for the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end of how long, and it will not prove false, though it linger. Wait for it. It will certainly come and not delay. I love that. I hate that answer, but I love what God's telling us. Though it linger. What's the it? Though the troubles, the hard times, the discrepancy between what we see in the world and what we know about God on the throne, he's saying the circumstances that you are lamenting, that you are struggling with, if you're even struggling with them, he said, understand, I'm going to absolutely deliver. 100%. I'm going to make things right. And wait for it, though it linger. Though the hard times linger. Though the struggles linger. Wait for it. See, how long faith is able to wait for the deliverance though it linger. See, he's not offering a timeline. He's offering hope. He's offering a reality that the way things are not how they are going to be. Not that the way things are not the way they might be, but the way things are now are not the way they are going to be. And until we understand that, we'll never, ever ask the question, why or how long? Because unless we truly believe and live like we believe it, because isn't that what faith that James talks about, a faith that does, you tell me your faith by what you believe, I'll show you my faith by what I do. If we really believe that deliverance is the ultimate in God's plan, that salvation and delivering us from any and all of the evil that we see, if we really believe that, then we live differently. We don't live like everybody else. We don't act like everybody else. We don't spend like everybody else. We don't even save like everybody else. We are completely and utterly transformed because of this. Unrecognizable. And so when we look around and we see all of the evil that's going on, and we're out there and we're doing something about it, we're telling people, and we're getting all of the oppression, all of the persecution, all that comes along, and then we ask these questions, God, why? Why is this happening? Why are things so difficult? How long is it going to be? He said, just relax and know that deliverance is coming, though your troubles linger. How long faith does not interpret God's silence as God's absence. Just because you're not aware of God's presence, just because you're not aware of God's presence, or just because you're not aware of God's activity, does not mean that He's not present or He's not active. You see, the struggle that Habakkuk had is that he knew God could do anything. He knows it. He knows, God, you can do anything. The problem is, I don't see you doing anything. How often have we struggled with that same thing? God, you could make all of this evil go away. You could make all of these struggles, all of this, all of that. You could make it go away, but we don't see that. But we have to understand God's silence. Just because I'm not aware of what He's doing doesn't mean He's not doing anything. Because I'm not aware of His presence or activity doesn't mean He's not present or He's not active. It's because the reality of this is that when we are able to ask how long faith is certain of God's ultimate triumph over evil. Move up a verse in Habakkuk 2. I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what He will say to me and what answer I'm able to give to this complaint. See, Habakkuk said, look, I'm going to stand at my watch because I know ultimately God is going to triumph over evil. Later on in history, there would be a book written or a letter written by a guy who's on a prison island, Patmos. You may have heard of this letter that he wrote, this book that's in the Bible. It's the book of Revelation. It's not Revelations, it's just one revelation. And it's God revealing to John not only what's happening, but what's going to happen. And Revelation is about the ultimate battle between good and evil. And what the Revelation tells us is that there are, and let me just distill the entire, there are all kinds of books and debates and questions. I mean, we can split a church 9 ways over Revelation. Am I right, Norman? Are you a preterist, a pre, post, blah, 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 blah. Let me just boil it all down for you. Revelation is this. There is a cosmic, universal battle going on between God and evil. That's happening, and this has happened. In the end, which has already taken place, oddly enough, not from our perspective, but from God's, in the end, good annihilates evil. We get to choose a side, so don't be stupid. Now, there are people in this room, Norman Horn being one of them, who are way smarter at this Bible stuff than I am. But Norm, am I wrong? That's revelation. God's going to win. You pick a side and don't be an idiot. That's it. All of the other stuff is just, if you can't figure out how to apply or whatever, that means you're just on the wrong committee. Revelation is all about teaching us that we think we should be on the planning committee. But all we need to be on is the welcoming committee. God doesn't need our advice on how this is all going to go down. He doesn't. There's a battle going on. Habakkuk is convinced of this. He knows how this ends, and he is certain. A how long faith is certain. We can only ask the question, how long is this going to go on, God, if we are convinced of his ultimate triumph over evil. I don't know how long, but I'm going to stand at my rampart. I'm going to stand at my watch. I'm going to stand where I am supposed, and I'm going to wait for a deliverance that I know is coming. And the last thing I want to share with you is how long faith rests in the quiet confidence of the sovereignty of God. Look at Habakkuk 2:20. Let's start in 18 because I love this. I love when we get a glimpse into God's snarkiness. I love this. And I know that he is because you see a little bit of that in Jesus and his personality coming out. Verse 18, of what value is an idol since a man has carved it? Or an image that teaches lies? For he who makes it trusts in his own creation. He makes an idol that cannot speak. Woe to him who says to the wood, come to life, or to the lifeless stone, wake up. Can it give guidance? It's covered with gold and silver. There's no breath in it. I love it how God's making fun of the fact that we do silly things like that. It's like, you know why why people make idols? Have a God they can understand, God they can control, God that makes sense to them. But then he says this, but the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him. Amen is right. When I was a kid, we used to sing a song based on that right there. Maybe you've heard it. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silent before him. Keep silent, keep silent, keep silent before him. Now, when I sang that song as a kid, it meant, hey, it's time for church to start. Sit down and be quiet. God's here now. God's here. It's a song about reverence. It's the last thing I'm going to say. Griff, are you ready? We're going to sing right after this. It's not about reverence. It's about confidence. It's about confidence. No matter what I see going on in the world, I know one thing. The Lord is in his holy temple. I don't need to say anything else. That's what that means. He doesn't need my advice. He just needs my confidence that he's got this. And since he's got this, I can hang in there, though it linger. Let's stand and sing.